Dexter Wansel, thank you for joining me on the Soul Show on WYEP in Pittsburgh.
Well, thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Well, my first question is, where's the fro that I have on all the old albums? Where's the box cut? Man, you always had, man.
Yeah, well,
Still looks good.
that was the time. I think that most of us had one of those.
That's right. I won't even tell you what I look like back in the day. I discovered you when I was in college, and uh, and I had Life on Mars and Voyager, always in rotation. The other two albums I love too, but to this day, whenever there's a space mission, something with a milestone, I throw on one of your tracks. The other guys, they put on Bowie or they put on
Right, right,
Elton
right, right.
John, but yours is mine. So thank you.
I thank you. I appreciate that.
you
Yeah.
uh you were one of the pioneers in the synthesizers, and you certainly brought that forward. How did that begin for you?
Well, it began after I got out of the service.
Mm-hmm.
I was auditioning for piano gigs at Sigma Sound.
Yes.
And one day, in I guess it was 71 or 72, one of the engineers came downstairs where I was sitting, and asked me if I knew anything about a Putney synthesizer. And I said, "Well, yeah, I can."
Was that one of those, yes, I'll do anything you say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so they took me up, and I got messing with the dials, and they had little pegs. Putney's had little pegs that
Oh,
you put in
okay.
the holes and stuff.
Hmm.
And I came up with some pretty good sine wave and oscillator sounds. And the next thing I knew, they were calling me in for $50 a session. And
Yes.
that was in 71, 72. Then in 73, I met and talked with Al Pearlman, who had his own company called ARP. And
Yes.
so he sent me, by 74, I had the ARP synthesizer, ARP 2600V synthesizer, and I started being used on sessions. Norman Harris would bring me in on the stuff he was doing with the Tramps. Bobby Martin would bring me in with the stuff he was doing on numerous artists, including Dee Dee and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And it really kind of got me in the door at Sigma, and actually with other aspects too, with people hiring me credited and uncredited, to do synthesis.
I can't imagine how much uncredited there is given what you had that is credited. You
Let me
were
tell
all
you,
over the place, man. Man, you
you
even had
know,
a song that Jackson Brown was supposed to sing, as
yeah,
I read
that's
about.
right.
I mean, how did,
That's right.
you
That's
know?
right. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, but finally by 73, I was in 74, I was members of both Yellow Sunshine and Instant Funk, and I was the live keyboardist for MFSB. Bobby Martin put me on the road with MFSB when they would go out and perform, which was like a 38-piece orchestra,
Yes,
with rhythm
yes.
section, horn, strings, the whole bit.
Those were the days.
And yeah, it was very interesting. And once I was at Philly International, signed there, and Bobby Martin left, Don Ronaldo, the contractor for the orchestra, made me their new conductor, and I conducted them in live concerts for a few years.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
there's not many of us left with MFSB. I think there's like 5 or 6 members left.
wow, wow, yes. Well, keep yourself healthy. I'm going to bring you to the present. I wanted to ground everyone that's listening to your accomplishments and the discovery of you. But then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you create this new album called The Story of the Flight Crew to Mars. And that just resonated with me right away. I didn't need to know much else. So, you're doing that, and you have a single comes out in the middle of November, and it just seems like you're on a new trajectory. How did that happen for you?
Well, I was decided that I had been working with some musicians and vocalists, wonderful, wonderful people here in Philly with some live concerts. And
Yes.
I decided I would like to try to put together an album and feature them, which it does. You know,
Yes.
the album features some wonderful vocalists and musicians, and I wrote songs for them and decided to make it into a story. So before each song, there's a vocal scene,
Yes.
you know, and so it tells the entire story from the beginning to the end of what went on with the flight crew and the ship to Mars. The Mars eclipse is what we called it on
Yes.
the album, you know. And I've always been a fan of Mars and astro um, being an amateur astronomer. You know, I've had
Yeah.
telescopes, still have one. You know, that I use, and so you know, it kind of all fits that way.
I feel like your music totally captures the scene. Um, I don't even have to close my eyes. I mean, the image is right in front of me with the eyes open. You've done a wonderful job with that over the years. I I was digging through my albums and I found on the back of this some writing from Kenny Gamble. And
Right,
it was something that I hadn't really paid attention to all these years. And I'm just going to read it real quickly because it's almost counterintuitive. It says on July 4th, 1976, the Viking probe, a man-made vessel, will send back pictures to Earth to let man see if life is on Mars. For what reason? Man has not mastered his existence on Earth. He cannot live in harmony with his natural environment yet. Out of all the things in the universe, such as the sun, moon, stars, planets, the liquid, solid, gas, the hot, wet, dry, cold, man is the only creation that is out of order with the universal order of things. So, all of a sudden, I'm wondering, did you love everything about the space programs, or were you a hidden Gil Scott Heron a little bit, talking about people on the moon? Were you
my
excited and
thing,
mm-hmm,
my thing was that you know I think there's much more to our reality than just what happens sociologically or environmentally on this planet. You know,
yes,
I think there's much more that affects us, and that we need to pay attention to that. You know, in that you know sometimes we see comets streaming down. When I was a kid living on a farm, I saw a meteor shower unlike anything I've seen since, and that is, you know, during normal meteor showers, you usually see like in the Pleiades or the Perseus, you only see maybe two or three meteors a minute, you know.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But this was more like 20, 30 meteors a minute, you know, and it was, just looked like stuff was falling from the sky. And that affected me in a way that, you know, I'm not saying that Kenny was wrong with what he wrote. I'm just saying that he had he had and thoughts about what he thinks should be going on. And my thoughts, I agree with him. And but at the same time, I think we have to keep looking up to see what's
yes,
going on there, you know, and to be aware of our situation as being back then. Let me put it to you this way: back then, uh, it was being said that the only planets in the known universe were the ones in this solar system. But since then, science has proven that there are more planets than stars, and we know that there are trillions of stars. So that speaks volumes as far as what we're going to learn in the future, you know, and how
exactly,
it's going to affect us, you know.
yes,
And I just wanted back then to kind of move in that direction, you know. On that album, you know, there's the Rings of Saturn, you know,
mm-hmm,
that which is one of the most, the song called the Rings of
mm-hmm,
Saturn, which is one of the most easy things to look at on as far as the planets in this solar system, and to become aware of other aspects of this solar system that we live in, you know.
I want to, I'm doing a 50th anniversary special on Philadelphia International. And I didn't want to take up all of your time with, these stories, but you were a big part of it, and you're the one that I can talk to. And so many of us see Philly International as one of the triumvirate, one of the three top labels for the music that we love. And you were right in that mix. And one of the things that I describe when I compare it to Stax and to Motown is Philly International was the socially conscious one from early on and was the lushest. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I truly believe that there was, like Kenny always said, there was a message in the music per se.
Yes, yes.
As far as the lushness is concerned, well, my mentors there, when I was writing all tons of arrangements and orchestrations there for the different artists, there, and for the producers there, my two mentors were Tom Bell and Bobby Martin. And arguably, Tom Bell's orchestrations and arrangements were were just a whole new path, of luscious sounds. You know what I'm saying? Like when you hear "You Make Me Feel Brand New" or "People Make the World Go Round," his arrangements, or "Silly" on Denise Williams, his arrangements were just amazing.
Yes.
And Bobby Martin's arrangements on "Me and Mrs. Jones," or all that fantastic stuff he did with Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, those arrangements.
Yes.
I think, there were other arrangers, there, like Jack Faith did a ton of work for Philly International Records. When you hear "Ain't No Stopping Us Now," that's Jack Faith writing the strings and horns and stuff. So they really brought that lusciousness to Philly International Records. They don't get the credit they deserve, though, I don't think. Sometimes when I look at the credits and I realize that some of those arrangements that we did back then, we don't get production credits for, because even though we wrote what you hear, it's like the production credit is, to somebody else. Let me put it that way.
I hear you.
I kind of ran into that. Some of my first arrangements and orchestrations were for MFSB, like "Philadelphia Freedom." That album I did a number of stuff on, I don't get that. Well, let me put it to you this way. As an arranger, that's one of my great hearts: synthesis and arranging. And Billy Paul used to say to me, "Dexter, whatever you do, when you get done writing your charts and getting them recorded in the studio, add your synthesizers."
Yes.
Yes. That's what I would do, and it kind of like distinctively made me a little different,
Sure.
Especially on my albums, which were really experimental. And I think that's why they kind of kept me making those albums. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I use synthesis, and when I wrote arrangements, I would add my synthesizers to them. When I did other artists like the Jones Girls or Phyllis Hyman or Teddy or Lou, I would add my synthesis to those arrangements too.
Yeah.
But they weren't as exploratory as what Life on Mars or Voyager, did.
Right. And let us not forget "Theme from the Planets."
"Theme from the Planets." Yeah, that drum beat. That drum beat, I still hear it to this day being sampled. It's like it's one of those hip hop foundational beats.
Yes.
So
yes.
And everything that I've heard it used on, I'm okay with.
Yeah. The way that starts, I remember
changed over the years. Hip hop has, the messages in hip hop aren't as straightforward or sociological as they were back then.
Right.
In the 80s and the 90s, it started altering to more street than it was back then. I mean, it was street, like The Message was street.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But what they're
Brilliant.
doing now
Brilliant.
is kind of different, but it's a new generation,
Yes. Yes. I often wonder, uh, what the older folks thought when our electronics came in. I mean, the difference, I think, is that it was still instruments operated with hands.
Right, right,
A-
right,
And
right,
so
right,
it was just different sounds coming out of what you did, as opposed to taking tracks and dropping them somewhere else. I think that
right,
might be the difference.
right. Well, electronics is my argument about that is that a lot of a lot of young people in urban communities where they could no longer get music lessons or instruments to learn, and they have no choice,
Yes.
but to experiment with electronics because it's not something. Yeah, sometimes the drum machines you play with your fingers and stuff like that, but a lot of that stuff is easier to put together than to go into the studio with a full rhythm section or a full orchestra. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I totally get it. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have to be taught, you have to be educated as far as being able to uh, to do that aspect of making music. But with drum machines and presets on a keyboard, you don't have to.
Nights over Egypt. That is you, right? That's you.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
absolutely. That's me
And
with my synthesizers
hmm
and my writing strings and I was supposed to go to Machu Picchu and Giza, to Peru and Egypt, and it got red flagged. I was traveling with Slippery Rock College, and it got red flagged by the State Department. That was around the time that Anwar Sadat was
yeah.
assassinated.
Now you
And
talking about Slippery Rock here in Pittsburgh?
yes,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
and Anwar Sadat had been assassinated. So I
hmm
just took those songs and I finished Nights Over Egypt. I never finished Clouds of Machu Picchu.
Oh, is
Yeah.
that coming? Will that come one day?
Well, I still have the original rhythm track,
Yeah.
I cut them both the same day. I cut both the original rhythm track and the original for both Nights and Clouds the same day.
Well, if you ever do it, send me a copy, please. I want to play it. People will get
The
quite a
Jones
kick
Girls
out of that.
were amazing. We became very close. Valerie and Brenda have passed on, but Shirley
Mhm.
is still here with us and she's carrying on that wonderful legacy. But we became like sisters and brother, where
Yes.
if I had projects I needed help on, they would be right there, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and they would be supportive and do background vocals and share leads and stuff like on a say like I wrote this song about what happened with disco, and it's called "I'll Never Forget My Favorite Disco," and that's the Jones
Remember that.
Girls,
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or Lou Rawls' "Lover's Holiday." That's the Jones Girls singing with Lou on that and talking with them on that.
Wow.
Yeah, they were wonderful. And I certainly miss working with them. I did a
Yes.
lot of stuff with the Jones Girls. Here's an interesting story. So one of these tracks I did with the Jones Girls is called "Love Don't Ever Say Goodbye."
hmm
And initially we cut the rhythm track and before they came in, and then after the rest of the fellas were gone, they came in, found out I had cut the rhythm track in the wrong key. So So, and Grover Washington Jr. was with me that day, right? We were hanging out, and he was watching me in the studio, and I
hmm
would sometimes go and watch him.
hmm
And he said, "Dex, how'd you do that?" I said, "I got to recut it, man. What do I do? What do I?" He said, "Well, just go in there and cut the drums over," which I could do. So I cut the drums and the bass over again in the right key and added keys and he said, "Let me put some sax on it. They'll like the saxophone
Oh.
sound."
Oh.
So,
What you're saying is it got better than ever before.
exactly. So he went in and put his soprano on and in spots and actually through the whole song. And I actually had to when I mixed it, I had to take out parts for Shirley's lead. You know what I'm
Sure,
saying?
sure.
And then I wrote some strings for it, and it just turned out beautifully. You know, but that's a Jones Girls story.
You know, there are a million great stories that we, the audience, don't know about where you made things work. And we don't know the craziness you went through to get to the end point.
Yeah, well, some of it was very interesting to say the least, like especially with that TP album I did on Teddy.
Mm-hmm.
So Stephanie Mills showed up, and she was supposed to be working with Teddy and Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, but
Mm-hmm.
Kenny and Leon were out of town. They weren't able to do their part for the album, so I had to jump right in, and in less than a week, I had written arrangements for 4 songs. I did a cover of "Feel the Fire" with him and Stephanie. I wrote a song called "Take Me in Your Arms Tonight." Cecil Womack had bought me, the brother of Bobby Womack,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
had bought me these 2 songs, and I did them both on Teddy at the same time, and so it all worked out. And I'm glad to meet you here. I
I'm
really
glad to
am.
meet you. I hope to
Yeah.
one day when I pass through Philly, and I come from time to time, maybe I could have a coffee with you. I've been a fan of yours since I was 19. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.